Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking at Cy Wakeman's No Ego today. You brought this one to us looking for ways to kind of cut through workplace drama and really get productive fast.
Yeah, and that's our goal here. Call out the key stuff from Wakeman on, minimizing that ego trap so you can get results without all the overwhelm.
It seems like a really relevant source. Wakeman's got this background in leadership, family therapy too, right?
Exactly. She uses all that plus research to dig into what she labels emotional waste. It's basically how ego messes things up at work.
So we'll be looking at leadership, engagement, accountability, change management too, all through this no ego lens.
That's the plan. Trying to bypass all that drama.
Okay, let's jump right in then. This idea of emotional waste, it sounds expensive. Where did she first notice this?
Well, it's interesting. She talks about her open door policy. You'd think, great idea, right? Open communication.
Yeah, sounds standard.
But it kind of backfired.
Yeah.
It mostly came in to, well, complain, gossip, share stories that weren't really factual. And often, this is the kicker, they'd specifically ask her not to take action. Just wanted to vent.
So basically, a time sink with no real outcome.
Precisely. A huge drain on time, energy, resources. It sounds like something you might even recognize, feeling stuck, listening without a clear path forward.
Oh, definitely. That feeling of just spinning wheels. And it's not just a feeling, right? She puts numbers on it.
She does. There's research she cites from the Futures Company, I think. It suggests billions, literally billions of dollars lost each year because of this stuff.
Billions. Wow. How? Just wasted time.
Wasted time is a huge part, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, like, failed projects, initiatives that don't land because of resistance or lack of buy-in, leaders just not knowing how to handle the ego aspect.
Okay, so what kind of behaviors are we talking about here? What creates this waste?
It's a whole range of things, really. Not taking ownership, blaming others, arguing with reality instead of just dealing with it.
Resisting change.
Oh, big time. Resisting change, gossiping, getting defensive, managing hurt feelings constantly. It all adds up.
And she found leaders spend how long on this?
The average was about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Every single day.
2.5 hours. You're just dealing with drama.
Yep. Think about what you could do with that time instead. It's huge.
No kidding. So the ego is really the villain in this story.
That's absolutely central to her argument. The ego, she says, acts like this filter. It distorts reality, makes us see things in a certain way.
I have so.
It pushes us into being either one up, always needing to be right, superior, or one down, always the victim, helpless.
Yeah, we've all seen that or done it.
Right, and recognizing which mode you or someone else is in, that's like step one.
And venting. I thought venting was supposed to be healthy. Get it off your chest.
Well, Wakeman flags that as actually being pretty problematic. She sees it as the ego's way to dodge self-reflection.
Really? How?
It feels good momentarily, maybe, but it stops you looking inward at your own part. The ego loves to spin these elaborate stories, right? Anger, outrage, making things personal when they probably aren't.
It's like that ice cream social example in the book.
Exactly. That was perfect. Getting upset because it was at 2 p.m. and assuming it was a deliberate slight. Have you ever done that? Jump to a conclusion.
Oh, for sure. You feel insulted, then later realize, oops, wasn't about me at all.
And her point is, most venting is about stuff that didn't even happen the way the story presents it.
What do you mean?
She suggests the core feeling underneath is usually simple, like I'm annoyed or I'm worried. But then the ego builds this whole narrative around it to justify the feeling, instead of just stating the feeling and dealing with the facts.
So strip away the story, find the core feeling and the facts.
Interesting. Okay, so if ego's the problem and waste is the result, what's the fix? How should leaders change their approach?
It's about shifting from being a passive listener or just telling people what to do to asking really good questions.
Questions that do what?
Questions that basically force self-reflection and accountability. Things like, okay, what do you know for sure here? Or what's your part in this?
Or what are your ideas for fixing this? And what are you actually doing to help? Kind of put the ball back in their court.
Right, less absorbing the drama, more prompting action. It sounds like it's about empowering people in a way.
Totally. Empowering them to take ownership. The default assumption should be, that colleagues have noble intent. We're all professionals here.
Like that nurse example, she was furious about some incorrect info.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of getting bogged down in her anger, the leader asked something like, tell me, What would great look like right now?
And that shifted things.
Completely.
Okay.
It focused her on the solution, not just the problem or who to blame. A really powerful pivot.
Okay, so better questions are key. Are there other specific tools or techniques she suggests for, like bypassing the ego?
Definitely. It's about engaging the thinking part of the brain, not just the reactive, emotional part. So good questions help, but she also offers some exercises.
Like what?
There's the new story exercise. It's pretty structured. You write down what's happening, then identify just the cold, hard facts. Then you explicitly separate those facts from the story or interpretation you've layered on top. And then you figure out value-adding actions based only on the facts.
That sounds really useful for untangling things when you're feeling emotional about a work situation.
It really can be. She also mentions the SBAR tool. SBAR,
Situation, background.
assessment and recommendations, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a communication framework. Helps you get straight to the point factually.
Yep.
Good for processing stories quickly and seeing where maybe someone needs development.
Any others?
There's thinking inside the box, finding possibilities within constraints, and editing your story where you literally jot down the facts while someone is venting to kind of gently bring them back to reality.
Like with Lisa, the training feedback example.
Yes, where the leader just noted the facts. Asked for feedback, received feedback. No crying.
Ah.
It just highlights that gap between event and reaction, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Employee engagement. Big topic. Wakeman seems to challenge the usual thinking here, too.
Oh yeah, she definitely pushes back on some common ideas. Like, she questions whether every opinion is equally credible.
Okay.
And this idea that leaders can just create the perfect environment and buy engagement, she says that doesn't really work. And crucially, engagement without accountability doesn't actually drive results.
So engagement isn't the holy grail everyone thinks it is.
Not on its own, no. For her, real engagement is a choice, and it's tied directly to personal accountability. It's not something you can just bestow on people by making circumstances perfect.
Interesting. So if focusing only on engagement scores is flawed, what should we focus on?
Accountability. It's about growing accountability in the people who are willing, rewarding that high accountability behavior.
And the unwilling.
Well, eventually helping them transition out if they consistently demonstrate low accountability. She uses those archetypes, right? Deb the driver versus Vicky the victim.
Ah, yes, the proactive one versus the one who blames everything else.
Exactly. Whose feedback do you think is more valuable when you want to improve things? Deb's, obviously. And she points out the flawed logic, like that underperforming college kid who blames the dorms, the food, the professor, everything but their own lack of effort. Perfect circumstances don't guarantee anything.
Right. Effort and accountability are key. Which brings us back to accountability being central. She calls it death to the ego. That's strong.
It is strong, because accountability requires self-reflection. And self-reflection is, in her framework, the ultimate ego bypass. It forces you to look at reality, at your own role.
So leaders need to make reality visible.
Yes, make it conscious, visible, so people can act intentionally. She even suggests giving self-reflection assignments after feedback. Helps people own their development.
And how does accountability develop? Is it just about consequences?
Consequences or experienced accountability are part of it, sure, but it also develops through challenge, through that self-reflection piece, through peer mentoring, and just continuous learning.
Like Michelle with the protective eyewear.
Perfect example. She stopped just enforcing the rule and started fostering personal accountability for safety. Much better, more sustainable results. Ownership, not just compliance.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, one more area she challenges. Change management. She thinks that's outdated too.
Yeah, basically the traditional focus on minimizing disruption, managing resistance. She argues that's not enough anymore. The pace of change is too fast.
So what's the alternative?
She calls it business readiness. It's not about managing a change. It's about developing people's overall ability to adapt and even thrive on change, to see it as opportunity.
Instead of seeing resistance as inevitable.
Exactly. She argues resistance is mostly ego-driven, another form of emotional waste. Change is only hard for the unready, for those attached to some perfect static ideal that doesn't exist.
So business readiness, how does that work? Is there a process?
She describes it like a pyramid or stages. People move from just being aware of change to being willing, then becoming an advocate, then being fully accountable for making it work, and finally just being ready for whatever comes next.
And leaders guide people through that.
There's the job.
Yeah.
Lots of transparency, clear expectations, and this is important, focusing on the willing. Don't let the unwilling few hold everyone else back.
The boat trip analogy, right, where some won't row.
That's the one. Activate the silent majority who might be willing, but are quiet. Don't get bogged down by the loud resistors. She even suggests readiness could be a new way to evaluate potential.
Interesting. Focus on adaptability. Okay, last main point seems to be about personal preference versus business needs.
Right, another ego hotspot. Basically, your personal preference for how things used to be or how you like things can't trump what the business actually needs to succeed.
Like the toasted bread example, or resisting Salesforce.
Exactly, resisting something necessary just because you prefer the old way. That's ego, she says. Leaders need to say yes to the goal, but maybe no to ego-driven demands about how to get there.
Like with her son wanting to see the play. Yes to the play, but within realistic constraints.
Yes to the what? Flexible on the how, within reason. Don't let personal preference derail business potential.
Okay, learner, let's try and wrap this up for you. It feels like the big takeaway is this framework for spotting ego, right? Seeing how it fuels that emotional waste and hurts productivity, maybe even your own well-being.
Yeah, and understanding that difference between the facts and the stories ego tells us. Plus, the power of self-reflection. That seems key. Focusing on accountability, being ready for change. It's about getting out of that unproductive cycle.
So practically speaking, maybe try that new story exercise next time things get dramatic at work, or think about SBIR for clearer communication.
Definitely. And notice the difference between sympathy, which might just feed the ego's story, and genuine empathy that looks towards action. And maybe just start thinking, how can I be more business ready instead of just reacting?
And here's that final thought Wakeman leaves us with. Personal preference can't trump business potential. Something to chew on. Where in your own work might preference be getting in the way of potential? What could shifting that unlock?
It's a really good question to ask yourself. Hopefully, this deep dive gave you some useful tools and maybe a new lens for looking at things.
We hope so too. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.